my friend, and welcome back. Today I want to talk about something that has kind of been on my mind a little bit and influencing my life, and I just wanted to share it. So, I have been really wanting to really go deep into my faith, and not exactly like researching, learning, kind of not exactly in that aspect, but going deep in just going back to my connection and my faith and that connection with God, and really getting into a state of worship and oneness, and I think that a lot of times when, and myself included, is a lot of times people are raised in religion, and then when they become spiritual, they go through a spiritual awakening, they no longer can identify with structured religion, and they identify with being spiritual. And there is nothing wrong with that. And I just but I think that there can be more of a common misconception that that religion and spirituality are two totally separate things, and they are actually not. And I heard someone say this, and they were talking specifically about religions, and how different they are, and he was just saying that they are just different roads to the same place. Everyone is trying to get to that same place. Everyone is trying to get to God, essentially. Everyone is trying to get to God. And the avenues that are taken to get there are just different. And I think that spirituality falls into that category as well. So what are you trying to achieve as a spiritual person? You're trying to evolve, but you are trying to achieve enlightenment. That is basically the end goal. But what is enlightenment? Enlightenment is like the total embodiment of the divine. So aren't you essentially trying to get to God? And even if you were to break things down, like, okay, religions believe that when you die, you go to heaven or hell. Maybe in spirituality, that's not exactly believed. However, in spirituality, you are meant to learn that you don't have to die to experience heaven, that you can experience heaven on earth. And that is what the second coming of Jesus is. It is that heaven on earth. It is that enlightenment. So if you look at it from that perspective, you could kind of understand that spirituality is also kind of that same path. And so going back to structured religion, I think the biggest reason people leave is because they just disagree with the policies and the teachings of structured religion. And I think that I'm not sure where this perspective came from, but it finally dawned on me one day the exact issue that I had with structured religion. You could pinpoint it, like I don't appreciate the self-loathing that it teaches, because when you teach people to hate themselves, they act on their self-image. So when you paint a self-image that is not very positive, how could you expect people to act very positive? As opposed to if you were to paint an amazing, a divine being self-image, a godly self-image, then people would start to act in that way. Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent. I don't want to go off into the sliced and diced things, but essentially the issue with structured religion is the egoic factor that has been folded into structured religion. it started, it started with God, started with the Word of God, but then it was man's interpretation of it and the filter of the ego that kind of put into place policies that maybe weren't exactly the best policies. Okay, we know that when we act from ego, that a lot of times we are not acting in the way that we would want to as divine beings. And it is the same thing with structured religion. Even though the Bible might be inspired by God, there might be things that the Bible, essentially the printed book, is essentially edited. It is, you don't know if things were left out or things were added. And then, when it comes to actually building the religion, the policies and the rules, all of those things were created by man. And in that, comes the egoic need for power, the greed, all of those lower vibrational things come into play when you bring your ego into something. And that is my issue with structured religion, is the ego that comes into play in it, because it kind of steers it in the wrong direction. But don't be mistaken, the same thing can happen with spirituality. So don't think that because you're not practicing a structured religion that spirituality is totally without ego. Because remember, you're experiencing it through your human self, through your egoic filter. So even spirituality can have the ego influencing it. It's just natural. It is our job as spiritually awakened people to bring the awareness to where that ego is. And we bring that awareness by questioning things, by asking questions, by reflecting on things. Is this exactly coming from the divine, or is this something that the ego is trying to slip in there? So these are the questions you want to ask yourself and go into reflection. Asking questions and questioning everything is part of being aware to things, and it is part of helping. And you don't want to spin your wheels and think about something so much and so crazily that your ego is being folded into it then. But a meditative reflection will a lot of times bring the clarity that you seek. And Lord knows, I think we're all relentlessly seeking clarity. Or, maybe not relentlessly seeking it, but I think it's something that we all want and desire and need from time to time. So it's not exactly in the churning of your mind that the clarity is going to come, but it is more in the quieting of the mind and the silent meditative states that you're going to find that clarity. But I just wanted to share one thing with you, because I started this video talking about that, that I really wanted to walk closer with God. I want to be more in that spirit. And knowing, what we talked about earlier, I have started to not cherry pick in religion, but I have started to take the parts of religion that really resonate with me and starting to bring them back into my life. And one of the ways that I am doing that is I am reading this book. Jesus Calling. Jesus Calling by Sarah Young. So it's devotions for every day of the year, enjoying peace in his presence. So this is a daily book that has, a very short, it's a little book, a very short 1-page passage that matches with the day of the year. And I love books like this because I find that a small teaching over a long period of time has more impact than, than maybe reading a whole book, because it breaks it down into small digestible things. And what I've been doing is I've actually been reading this at night, and then I take a few reflective, meditative moments on the passage. And I have been getting great comfort from this book. I have been I have been getting what I have been seeking from this book. I have been seeking that daily reminder to bring me back to God, to bring me back to the divine, bring me back to my oneness, bring me back to my faith, bring me back to the perspective of the divine. We get so caught up in this human life, and it's natural, and I'm not condemning myself or anyone for it, but that is why we need practices like a little book like this, because it then brings us back, and it's that daily, that constant reminder. I feel like the big thing in like the health and wellness world right now is consistency. And consistency isn't something that's new, but I think it's something that's kind of getting that light. We're finding that small things consistently over time have a bigger impact than going all in and going hard for a very short period of time. So my goal with this book is to reinforce daily my faith, reinforce. And now this is like anything else: take what serves you, leave what doesn't. So, but I have been finding the passages to be quite neutral, to not be a lot of the to not embody a lot of the issues that has steered me away from structured religion. I have been finding this to be incredibly neutral, is the best way I can describe it. It is very, it's just very, very heartwarming and very insightful. And, one of the passages that stuck with me and that I have been reflecting on for the past few days is there was a part of a passage where, God or Jesus says that when you go through something challenging or something trying or something that you would define as really bad, God only means for you to experience that once. That specific thing was only meant for you to experience once. Let's take a very broad example, say losing your job. That could be very challenging, it can be very trying, it can be, very upsetting. Why did this happen? We are only meant to experience something like that. And I don't mean once, like once in a lifetime. I mean that day when you lose your job, that experience, you're only supposed to experience that once, and you relive it by living in fear with the next job that you get, that you're going to lose it. That is you re-experiencing that, or dwelling on it, holding on to it. Why did this happen? Why me? Or what do I do now? And this is a mess, and this is awful. When you start to cling to those things instead of moving forward, instead of continuing to move forward, instead of saying, okay, well, this is where I am right here, right now. What's my next step? What's the next step? I don't need to know the next 3 steps. I just need to know the very next step and keep taking the very next step. When you dwell on it and hold on to it and keep it in you, you are emotionally experiencing that over and over. And that is not what our life lessons are meant to be. They're meant to be experienced once, learn the lesson, heed the message, and let it go, and keep it moving, and keep yourself moving forward. So it is just different little lessons like that I am finding so amazing coming from this book. And I really, really just wanted to share that. And I wanted to preface it with, that little talk about spirituality and religion, not so different as we might think. much more similar than we may think. So, that was our message for today. My name is Anne. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.